Elsewhere on the continent, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has appointed former opposition leader John Steenhuisen as Minister of Agriculture on Sunday, finalizing a new coalition cabinet aimed at maintaining governance after the ANC lost its majority in recent elections. The cabinet formation followed intense negotiations with Ramaphosa retaining ANC stalwarts like Enoch Godongwana as finance minister and making changes, including Ronald Lamola as Minister of International Relations. Energy was separated from mineral resources, a move to diversify energy resources. Ramaphosa emphasized unity and collaboration among diverse cabinet members tasked with revitalizing the economy, improving infrastructure, and reducing unemployment.
South African journalist Leeuw joins us now to discuss the undercurrents of Ramaphosa's formation of a coalition cabinet, how it's been received, and likely challenges it will face. Good to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us here on Newsday.
Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to your viewers.
Good morning, good afternoon to you as well. Now, how does the coalition cabinet reflect the ANC's weakening grip on power?
I think what we need to acknowledge as a startup is the balancing act that the president was faced with. So as opposed to seeing it as a weakening grip, I think this was the best alternative to making sure that we've got a cohesive government, considering the fact that following our elections, there wasn't, the country did not give any particular party a mandate to lead because none of them had the 50+1 numbers that they required to stay in power. And looking into the numbers that you need in order to pass anything in Parliament, the ANC was forced to go into what they are calling a government of national unity. Does this weaken their grip a bit? I do not necessarily think so, because I do think that some of the key ministries were retained by the ruling party, for example, with Treasury, even though, Godongwana is still going to be joined by David Masondo. He does have oversight from the DA. We've got agriculture, which has now been moved to the DA. There was a need to include all of these other parties because in the agreement that they have, there is a need for them to govern together. I think that is a better way to look at it as opposed to the weakening grip. What this bodes for the ruling party in the build-up to the 2029 elections, however, that's a different conversation altogether.
All right, let's get into that conversation about some of these key ministries. Some might argue and say the ANC was able to keep key ministries. Others are saying basic education, agriculture, home affairs, especially education, going to the DA. And we know the historical antecedent of the South African education system. And of course, agriculture. We know land is a massive issue. As much as, of course, we know that land has been separated, we still know that agriculture will be a massive point of discussion and dissent in the coming years. How do you think they will fare with these portfolios being managed by the DA?
I think the point of departure from that question should be whether or not any key policies will be affected by agriculture falling into the hands of the opposition. Remember that once you do take up the position in cabinet, you're not necessarily serving for your political party on its own. There are still policies in place that need to be followed. And in order to make any changes, this then does need to go back to Parliament for the discussions. So I do think that, the ANC did draw a line there, knowing how contentious an issue that land is, and how people would be in uproar if land did not end up in the hands of the ruling party. So I think the balancing act that the president did there was to put the PAC on land and the DA on agriculture, and they've got extremely opposing views on the land issue. So I think it's yet to be seen on whether or not, any of that will impact quite heavily. But we do know that the issue of farm murders is also a very big issue in South Africa. There was the contention of a movement, Freedom Front Plus, going to other countries saying that the farm murders are exceedingly higher than what they are. So I think maybe highlighting and zoning in on how those kinds of issues will be tackled, food security will be tackled. That is yet to be seen as it's still early days, but those are things to watch quite closely.
Now, what are the potential fault lines within the coalition that could lead to its potential collapse?
Well, I think, judging from some of the interviews that have come out, I think, earlier today we did hear one of the chief negotiators for the Democratic Alliance, Helen Ziller, speaking about the fact that different policies need to be exchanged because, their representatives that are currently in government are not there to serve an ANC government, meaning that they are going to be looking at doing overhauls, looking at what the policies are and how in line those are with their own mandate. And as said earlier, it's a bit of a tussle between serving your party and serving the country. We can expect many robust discussions to be happening in Parliament. And with that said, we'll have to see then that are those who are then left in the Parliament seats able then to take up these issues head on, seeing as a lot of the people with the institutional knowledge and know-how of Parliament have now ascended to these government positions.
Right. Now, I'm just looking at some of the responses, specifically, let's say, from the EFF, who've reacted and said that the announcement by Cyril Ramaphosa confirms that the ANC has abandoned its historical role, as a liberation movement in Africa. Now, I know 5 years is a very long time, but, some people are going as far as saying, well, this will certainly mean that the ANC will not be a big player in South African election processes moving forward, as the opposition are going to gain momentum from the left. But, within 5 years, do you think that ANC evolving from being the traditional liberation movement is going to bode well for their popularity over the next 5 years?
Well, there are a lot of people that are, saying that the ANC did sell out in the current makeup of their GNU. A lot of people who believed in the ANC as the liberation movement would have expected that some sort of consensus would be found within the EFF and the MK parties joining to reach that maximum number that they required in order to form government, considering that all the people that are from the EFF and the MK parties are former ANC members. So that shying away somewhat has left some people feeling as if though they are hard done by the party and they've not followed the mandate that they were given to bring back, their former members to form one full party. But it's yet to be seen how the 5 years will play out if this GNU can in fact stay strong and hold up for a full 5 years. We do know that even before that cabinet was announced, there was a lot of back and forth between the President Cyril Ramaphosa and the DA leadership that was negotiating for the number of seats that they'd be able to get to govern. And threats were being made, even in some of this communication that was leaked to the media, saying that if the ANC does not offer certain positions or a certain amount of positions, they will be pulling out from some of their other agreements within provincial makeups of government. And we do know that coalitions in South Africa have not necessarily, stood the test of time. We've got examples in the likes of Gqeberha as well as Ekurhuleni in the city of Tshwane, with continuous motions of no confidence and uncertainty about whether or not we've got MECs, etc. And the hope is that the ANC will be able to balance that out, without drowning out their people in this 5-year term. That, however, is something that's going to be quite difficult. And that was the point that the EFF was making in the letter that they sent before the announcement was making, saying that in instances where the EFF and the NCs were together, their coalition agreements have seemed to work a bit better than what the others are. But now we're here where we are sitting with the GNU as it stands, and we are yet to see what that means for their people. I know that a lot of disgruntled people have already crossed over to the MK, but it's not as simple as saying with the ANC making this move, it's entirely over for them, because it'll also depend on the quality of opposition that we get from the likes of the EFF, the likes of the MK, the likes of everybody else. That will be the decider for the country.
Now, Leeuw, how does this coalition government potentially impact South Africa's global economic standing and investor confidence?
Investor confidence and the rank seem to be quite strong this morning. I think that keeping the core team in Enoch Godongwana and David Masondo has done a lot to appease the markets, because as political appointments, especially the finance minister role, has impacted the rand. excuse me, last week we saw a little bit of volatility, but to be able to go back, into the economy and leaders of business and the world to say, our policies stand. We still have a very firm hold on what we're doing in Treasury. We still have a firm hold on what we're doing on trade and industry. I think that signals and it bodes quite well. And the rand has, reacted as such this morning when we woke up. So I think that economically, if we're able to keep to the policies that are in place and make sure that we are moving forward and looking for solutions to grow the economy, I don't think that it should be a problem, because even this morning, a lot of business leaders were coming in support of the GNU and where we stand with our stability and able to form a government with the coalition partners.
All right, awesome stuff. Leeuw, we're out of time, but just very quickly before we go, I've seen a statement, or was it an interview this morning, from the Teachers Union and murmurings of potential protests that might be popping out in the next few days or few weeks. Do you think that it'll be a rocky time in terms of us seeing some protest action before things settle?
I think it would be preemptive to say that there will definitely be protest action, but there definitely is disgruntlement from the unions. So the teachers union said this morning that they're not happy with the DA minister, Siviwe Kwahobe, who has now taken over, saying that they've done so much work in implementing certain policies and looking into the norms and standards and the way forward. And they're not quite certain that all of this will be prioritizing the Black students. As you know, in our education system at the moment, some of the issues that plague us is the placing system, the issue of the Afrikaans language, as well as access to quality education. Some of these things which are in the norms and standards, and this is what they say is being compromised by placing somebody who is new to the conversation after a lot of work has been done.
Well, South African journalist Leeuw, thank you so much for your robust analysis. We appreciate your time here on Newsday, and thank you for joining us.